One of the things that is obviously apparent is, yes, there are people that need to be looked after in society. Yes, there are people that need help. But in order to do that, the government has to be profitable. People want a hand up, not a handout. The more you give people, the more they expect.
Now, one of the comments that Peter Casey made during the presidential campaign was that Ireland is becoming a social welfare state, and that a lot of people in the country expect to get something for free nowadays.
We were very outraged by it, to be honest. We were very upset because a lot of lone parents are locked out of the employment market because, firstly, there's a lack of affordable childcare. Secondly, employers do not provide flexible, family-friendly jobs. And thirdly, many times we've looked at scenarios where lone parents are actually better off in social welfare, even though that's a life of poverty.
I have said all along that I'm totally in favour of supporting people who need help. And in order to have an effective welfare state, you have to be profitable.
Of course we want a state that's profitable, that can afford to support people. But we also need to have the infrastructure put in place. And then instead of vilifying those people who are locked out of the job market, giving them ability to work and then allowing them to work and making the economy stronger for everybody.
You can't be generous if you are not being profitable. The whole system is just not fit for purpose. It needs to be re-examined. At no stage have I ever said that we shouldn't have a welfare state. Of course we have to look after the people in society that need to be looked after.
Most people want to work, but the barriers are there, they are real, and unless we get a functioning childcare system and an employment-friendly system, it's not going to change.
So social welfare is never a lifestyle choice?
Social welfare, if it's a lifestyle choice, is a very poor lifestyle choice. It is living poverty, and while it can be okay for a short-term basis and a long-term basis, the length of poverty and the length of being on social welfare can be very depressing, very hard to manage.
You've somewhat rolled back on your comments on Ireland being a social welfare state during the presidential election, but do you believe that you did tap into something with those comments there? Because I think some people are aware that there is social welfare fraud that goes on in Ireland, and that
There are people who are abusing the system.
Everybody thinks that they know somebody who's abusing the system. And I'm not saying that there aren't any, but it's hard to see that that's a major problem.
A country is just like a business. If you're profitable, you can be generous. If you're not profitable, you can't be generous.
The economy has grown very, very rapidly in the last 5 or 6 years. We're at the threshold of full employment now. So we're well able to afford a welfare state, and probably even a better welfare state. Mm-hmm. And the kind of welfare state we've got and the extent of the welfare state we've got is really a matter of policy choice. This is maybe where Peter and I might disagree a little. I don't always see a clash between welfare type provisions on the one hand and economic, if I can use that word, on the other. Sometimes changes in policy benefit both sides of the equation, both the welfare and the work equation.
Can social welfare ever be about profitability, though? Should it not be about helping
those
in need?
It's not about profitability. My point is that the state needs to be profitable in order to be able to provide the benefits that it has to provide. And the state has a responsibility to provide benefits, absolutely. But in order to do it, you have to be profitable. I mean, how many people actually do you think? What percentage of people on the system are abusing the system? Would you say? Be very small, wouldn't it?
If we knew the number, we'd know who they were, and that would be it.
You're right, yeah.
It is important that you have a social safety net. It is important that, we look after people as a state. I mean, the role of economics is all about how you generate economic activity, how you generate scarce resources, and how you allocate those scarce resources. And I think two areas are important there. One is you need to try and stimulate economic activity to generate the tax revenues that fund everything else. But on the other hand, you do need a social safety net, because if you're living in a society where people fall on hard times for whatever reason, that they fall out of the system, I think that would be a recipe for serious social as well as economic problems.
One of the things I did raise in the presidential debate was we needed to change the rules for entrepreneurs when they go broke. Because like 80% of businesses who start fail. That's just an unfortunate economic statistic.
Yeah, I have to say my thoughts would be that, while the social welfare system here is very, very definitely focused in one direction, and it totally ignores entrepreneurs who start businesses, who go out of business, who fall on hard times, they do not have a social safety net. And I think that is a major flaw in the system. I feel that any social welfare system which results in a person being better off out of work than in work, there is something deeply flawed about that. And you do hear lots of anecdotal stories about people who will not take jobs because they will lose all of their allowances and financially they will be worse off.
The time you pay for creche and child minding, I mean, I think creche and child minding should be 100% tax deductible. That way then it would encourage people to, to get over. The point you made there is very, very, very valid. If it's going to cost somebody money to go and take a job, why would they? And that whole system needs to be looked at. And people want to work. Generally speaking, people, if they have the opportunity.
The other aspect I think that does need to be looked at is the whole concept of universality. So, for example, in child benefit, regardless of how wealthy or poor I am, if I have 2 or 3 children, I will get the same amount of money. Politically, taxing child benefit would be signing your death sentence as a politician.
Peter, you're looking to enter politics. Do you think child benefit should be means tested? Should it be taxed?
I think it should be means tested, of course.
There is a bias against welfare. There's this ethos that welfare for many people is synonymous with giving people money to do nothing, to sit on a couch and watch television. The reality is that the vast bulk of welfare payments go to old age pensioners, go to pay the pensions of teachers and nurses and Gardaí and politicians and judges who are paid by the state during their working lives. A lot of it goes to people who are on disability, who are not in a position to work. And I think we need to change that image. Many of the people we work with, they haven't got a hope of getting a job. They have left school early, they have no skills, they have no employment history.
I lost a child anyway, so basically I started taking drugs. Now I took drugs to blank out things, issues that happened years ago, Like people will tell you that they don't know why I took drugs, or they'll say, I took drugs to fit in with the lads. I took drugs to forget about things. Painful things that happened.
How did you manage to get off?
To be honest with you, I went into Beaumont Hospital. I had a baby girl, and her name was Mary Kate, and there's this little beaut fighting for her life, and I made a promise to her. I said, I'm going to get clean. So eventually I got clean. It took 2.5 years, but I got clean. And my daughter had cerebral palsy, but I'm delighted I got clean because I was there for, to see her. Like, I was there in the room when I was on the drugs. I was in the room, but I wasn't there. And she gave me the willpower. That was my time. When Mary Kate was the kick that I needed, And I have to be honest with you, she died there last year. She was 10, and that was very hurtful, But I haven't slipped back into a downward fall, if you understand,
That's been very tough.
Yeah, it was very tough, but I have Peter and the supporting team around us.
Do you feel that you're one of those people who we talk about when people are caught in this social welfare trap that they feel that they can't get out of?
Yeah, to be honest with you,
if it wasn't for the likes of the Father Peter McVerry Trust, where would you be? Would you still be in the streets?
Every system is abused. The biggest abuse is in the taxation system. The abuse of the taxation system, people evading their taxes, is far, far greater. So every system there will be abuse, and obviously the administrators, the effort is to try and reduce that abuse to a minimum.
Peter, when you hear stories like this, should the government be doing more to help people in this position? People who are caught in the social welfare trap instead of people having to go to charities to get help?
Absolutely. Well, that's the role of the government. I mean, that's what we talked about. You have to be efficient as a government if you want to be compassionate as a society. It's impossible. If you waste $1.5 billion building a hospital, you haven't got the money available to fund the people that really need the help in the social welfare. So, the government has to be run like a business, and it has to be held accountable when there's wastage. We've seen and talked to people who have said that they can't afford to take a job because they can't afford the crash. They can't afford crash payments. Should be tax deductible, and we should make it affordable for people to actually take and get jobs.